The moment Zhang Ling arrived for the Tang fitting, the atmosphere seemed to change almost instantly. What should have been a routine professional appearance suddenly became a moment that fans could not stop talking about, because there was one question hanging over everything: could Tian Xiwei have been there too? Nothing about the title confirms what happened behind those doors, and there is no reason to turn a rumor into a fact, but the possibility alone was enough to send curiosity racing through the fan community. Zhang Ling arriving for a fitting already created its own sense of anticipation. A fitting can be quiet compared with a major public event, but it is also where the visual identity of a project begins to take shape, where costumes, character details, atmosphere, and chemistry start becoming real. And when fans know that Zhang Ling and Tian Xiwei have already captured enormous attention together, even the smallest possibility of their paths crossing can feel much bigger than an ordinary production moment. Imagine the scene surrounding the fitting location. Staff moving quickly through the day, clothing preparations taking place behind closed doors, schedules being checked, cameras appearing outside, and people trying to understand who might be arriving and when. Then Zhang Ling appears, and suddenly the ordinary rhythm becomes something much more exciting. His arrival for the Tang fitting immediately gives fans something concrete to focus on. What was he wearing? What expression did he have? Did he look relaxed, serious, curious, or completely focused on work? Was he arriving alone, or could someone else connected to the project have been nearby? These small details may seem insignificant to someone watching from the outside, but to devoted fans, they become pieces of a much larger story. Every glance, every arrival, every movement can inspire discussion, especially when the possibility of Tian Xiwei joining him enters the conversation. And that is where the mystery becomes especially fascinating. The question is not simply whether Tian Xiwei was present. The deeper question is why fans immediately connected her name to the moment. When two performers have already created a strong screen presence together, viewers naturally begin looking for signs of another collaboration, another shared environment, another opportunity to see their dynamic develop. It does not necessarily mean there is a secret relationship or hidden story behind the scenes. Sometimes two actors simply happen to work in the same professional circle, attend related activities, or become associated because fans genuinely enjoy their chemistry. But fandom has its own emotional language, and when a familiar name appears beside another familiar name, curiosity can spread incredibly fast. The Tang fitting therefore becomes more than a simple wardrobe appointment in the imagination of viewers. It becomes a moment filled with unanswered questions. If Zhang Ling was there, what was being prepared? What kind of character might require the fitting? What atmosphere could the production be building? And if Tian Xiwei was anywhere nearby, would fans notice? Would someone capture a glimpse? Would another arrival suddenly change the entire story? These questions create the kind of suspense that does not need a dramatic announcement. Sometimes uncertainty itself becomes the most powerful part of the story. For fans who have followed Zhang Ling closely, his appearance at a fitting can also be fascinating because costume is such an important part of an actor's transformation. Before the cameras begin rolling, clothing can reveal clues about the world a character belongs to, the emotional tone of a project, and even the kind of journey that character may experience. A fitting room is where those possibilities begin taking shape. Fabric, color, accessories, hairstyle, and silhouette can all contribute to the image viewers eventually remember. So when Zhang Ling arrives for this kind of preparation, fans are naturally curious about what the final result could look like. But the moment becomes even more intriguing when speculation begins connecting Tian Xiwei to the same environment. The idea of Tian Xiwei joining him creates a completely different emotional layer because fans are not only interested in what either performer does individually. They are interested in the possibility of seeing them share another professional moment. That possibility can make even an ordinary entrance feel significant. Perhaps she was there. Perhaps she was not. Perhaps their schedules simply overlapped. Perhaps fans interpreted separate pieces of information as part of one larger event. Without reliable confirmation, every possibility remains open, and that uncertainty is exactly what makes the conversation so intense. There is something uniquely powerful about moments that happen away from a major stage. A red carpet is designed for attention. A press conference is designed for cameras. A public event is expected to create memorable images. But a fitting is different. It is part of the working process, usually much quieter and much less theatrical. That is why fans can become especially curious when they hear about an actor arriving for one. It feels like a glimpse toward the production process itself, even when very little is publicly revealed. The imagination naturally fills the empty spaces, creating questions about what might be happening behind the scenes. And then comes the moment when Tian Xiwei's name enters the conversation. Suddenly, fans begin revisiting everything they know about the pair. Their previous appearances, their shared screen moments, their expressions during public events, their professional interactions, the way viewers interpret their chemistry. None of those things can prove what is happening privately, but they explain why the possibility of another shared moment generates so much excitement. For many fans, Zhang Ling and Tian Xiwei have a combination that feels unusually memorable on screen, and the idea of seeing that energy connected to another project can be enough to create a wave of anticipation. The emotional intensity comes from the gap between what fans want to know and what they actually know. That gap is where speculation grows. If there is no confirmation, people look at whatever details are available and wonder whether they connect. If another person appears at the same location, fans ask whether the timing means something. If an image shows a familiar face, people wonder whether it is part of the same schedule. And if there is no image at all, the mystery becomes even stronger. The absence of information can sometimes create more conversation than a clear announcement because everyone is left wondering what might be happening beyond the visible frame. But there is another side to this excitement that deserves attention. Zhang Ling and Tian Xiwei are both performers with their own careers, schedules, responsibilities, and professional choices. Their fans can celebrate the possibility of collaboration without needing to turn every coincidence into proof of something personal. That distinction makes the mystery more enjoyable rather than less. Instead of assuming what happened, fans can simply appreciate the possibility and wait for reliable information. Sometimes the most exciting stories are the ones that leave room for discovery. As the fitting continues, one can imagine the atmosphere becoming increasingly focused. Staff members have their responsibilities. The actors have their own preparations. Everyone involved is working toward the moment when the fictional world becomes visible on screen. Somewhere inside that process, decisions are being made that viewers may not understand until much later. A costume chosen during a fitting could eventually become one of the most recognizable looks of a character. A small accessory could carry meaning. A hairstyle could completely change the impression of a performance. And a simple fitting could be one of the earliest steps toward a project that fans may remember for years. That is why Zhang Linghe's arrival matters beyond the immediate excitement. It signals movement. It suggests preparation. It gives fans the feeling that something is taking shape, even if the full picture remains hidden. And when Tian Xiwei's name becomes attached to that possibility, the anticipation becomes even more emotional. Fans begin imagining what their presence could mean for the project, what kind of scenes could eventually emerge, and whether their chemistry could once again become one of the most discussed elements surrounding a production. There is also a fascinating psychological side to the reaction. Fans often develop a strong emotional connection to the stories and characters they watch. When actors portray memorable dynamics, viewers can become invested in the emotional world created on screen. That investment does not disappear when the episode ends. It continues through interviews, promotional events, behind-the-scenes moments, and future projects. So when two actors who have generated that kind of interest appear connected to the same piece of news, the reaction can be immediate and powerful. It is not simply curiosity about a fitting. It is curiosity about whether another chapter of a familiar creative journey might be beginning. And perhaps that is why this moment feels bigger than it should. A fitting is usually a private part of production. An arrival is usually just an arrival. Yet combine those two things with a beloved actor, an intriguing project, and the possibility of another familiar performer being nearby, and suddenly the entire situation becomes a mystery waiting to be solved. Fans do not know exactly what happened. They do not know whether Tian Xiwei actually joined him. They do not know whether the two were working on something connected. And that uncertainty keeps the conversation alive. The most captivating part is imagining what fans would feel if the possibility were eventually confirmed.